Edition of the Patriots Beat podcast here on the CLNS Media Podcast Network and on Patriots Press Pass. I'm Evan Lazar, joined as always by Alex Barth, an early noon edition of Patriots Beat today because Alex Barth is on 98.5 tonight. So he's got the big guns coming out tonight. What time are you on tonight?
7 to 11 with Matt McCarthy.
So there you go.
We got Red Sox Yankees tonight. We'll talk that. NHL draft tonight. We'll probably get into the Patriots a little bit as well.
Some Bombers takeover for those that don't know. Bombers takeover on 98.5. Ithaca Bombers, that is, on 98.5 tonight. So we're going to do the show a little bit early today. I asked you guys to put in some questions on my Twitter feed. So we're going to get to a bunch of those here today. If you have other questions, please ask them in the chat right now. We'll also pull up questions from the chat live here on air as we go through the next hour or so. I wanted to start with our questions, though, with this football team and where we stand about 3 weeks from training camp, a little less than 3 weeks at this point to the day. Alex, we've talked so much about this team at this point, breaking down the roster inside and out at mini camp, after the draft, so on and so forth. But when you sit back and you take that 30,000-foot view, the bird's eye view of this team, when we get to training camp on July 27th, what is going to be the number one thing on your mind that you're going to be watching for to see how this particular roster battle or something along those lines shakes out?
I think probably the secondary and the cornerbacks. I think that's the biggest thing. You're not going to compete in the modern day and age in the NFL unless you have at least average level cornerback play, right? It's not going to be what it was a couple years ago with Stephon Gilmore and JC Jackson both in their prime. It's just not going to be that. But
yeah,
can somebody emerge next to Jalen Mills is a legitimate, 65, 70% usage rate kind of guy, whether that's Jack Jones, whether that's Malcolm Butler, whether it's Shawn Williams coming out of nowhere, whether it's somebody else. That to me is the biggest question facing this team right now is the cornerback position. There's other big ones, the offensive line, the wide receivers, things like that. But I think the cornerback position is the biggest mystery heading into camp.
It feels a lot like 2012 around here right now, or 2011, 2012, at that period of time, right before the Patriots traded for Aqib Talib at the trade deadline. And then when Talib left, they signed Darrelle Revis, and then they signed Stephon Gilmore a few years after that. And we're passing the torch after maybe learning a little bit from their mistakes, or not necessarily mistakes, but just learning from their shortcomings from that 2010 to 2012 range when they didn't have a true lockdown number one corner. This secondary feels a lot like that, and it's hard to say any other thing is more pressing for this team right now than how that shakes out, especially when you look across the division and the other teams in the AFC that are on their schedule. They play Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis in Buffalo. They play Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle down in Miami. They have the Jets, who, for all their shortcomings, have built a decent receiving corps with Corey Davis and now Garrett Wilson from Ohio State and Elijah Moore in the slot. You have Devontae Adams on your schedule. You have Jamar Chase and the Bengals on your schedule. This is a difficult gauntlet of wide receivers to go through without really great high-end cornerback talent. So what's the answer there? Are they going to be full smoke and mirrors? Because when they didn't have that true alpha, that true number one guy, a lot of what they did was some of the zone stuff and some of the disguising and a little bit more of a bend don't break approach on the back end, which I know drove fans nuts, but I think they really felt like they didn't have a choice. Like, if they were going to try to get up in everybody's face and play man-to-man, they were going to get beat more often than not. So this was really the only answer that the team had. I still look at that cornerback group as a potential Achilles heel for the Patriots. And if a guy like Jack Jones doesn't emerge from that rookie class and take a job at the outside cornerback spot, I am pretty worried about that group, especially against the teams that they're going to face in the regular season, and in particular those divisional games as well. When you go out in Miami in week one, of course you have Jonathan Jones to maybe take one of the speedy guys down with the Dolphins with Hill and Waddle, but who takes the other guy? How does that coverage structure look? Obviously, they still have to get through Buffalo with their two-headed monster. It's certainly the number one question. Just to present a different argument here, Number two for me is still the offensive system and how this whole thing is going to look on the offensive side of the football. I don't want to get too caught up in what we saw in minicamp or overreact to some of the things that they were doing with the zone stuff and maybe looking a little bit more McVay / Shanahan-y out there in the spring. But I'm just excited if this is actually a change that's coming. Like, isn't that just exciting to see something different? We've seen the same offensive system for 20 plus years now in New England, and it's obviously been extremely successful. But I think from my standpoint, maybe this is just because we cover the team and it gives me something else to break down on the film and things like that. But it's exciting to have some change. It's has some fresh ideas and a fresh perspective on how to play offense. I'm really looking forward to being able to have those discussions with everybody and break down the tape of what they're doing a little bit differently. Sometimes change is good, right? And it can be a good thing. And I think that this could potentially be one of those things. And we'll get to a few questions that I saw on my Twitter feed about this topic. But I think just from a perspective of covering the team and watching them every single day, having a little bit of a tweak system or having a little bit of a new look offensively, that's exciting. I think that's going to be fun to talk about.
It is. Sorry, it's some college football news literally just broke. It's pretty big. So,
what is this big college
that.
football news?
North Carolina,
oh my
Florida State, Virginia, and Clemson to the SEC.
Clemson to the SEC is interesting, right? I mean, that's
now finally Dabo can get run out of there.
Another potential powerhouse going to the SEC in terms of their recruiting ability and their national championship pedigree. That's going to be fun. So are they going in? What do we know? What division? Like, because there's divisions in the SEC.
So it
right?
says that they're negotiating to join the SEC. ESPN is going to void their TV deal with the ACC. I would guess the SEC divisions are a mess to begin with. I'm trying to pull it up here. There's something like it was a couple of years ago when Missouri won its division. Yeah, it was the winner of the East Division was further west than the winner of the West Division. So I would guess they'll rework it all. Some of these conferences have speculated going to 3 divisions. I could see that and maybe adding like a North division, right? An East, West, and North. It's maybe those teams, Kentucky and Missouri. But college football continues to tweak. And I mean, it's going to be for everything, obviously. And actually, that'll be really interesting because the SEC has never been a basketball conference outside of Kentucky and occasionally Tennessee. But now you have Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, and Auburn have kind of stepped up in the last couple of years as programs. Oklahoma is obviously a great program. And then Virginia, North Carolina, of course, true blue blood programs. So that's almost more interesting for basketball than football. 3 of those 4 schools are going to get smoked in football in the SEC. Clemson, we'll see. But the SEC is now like a pretty legit basketball conference.
So I don't know what the NCAA can do about this, but this wild west with the conferences it can't be good for the sport, right? It just can't be good for the sport or for the product. This is crazy. Like, this is absolutely absurd. This is not as absurd as UCLA and USC going to the Big Ten, right? Like, that was like, what the hell is going on, right? Like, this is a bunch of schools like Michigan and Ohio State in the northern part of the country, in the Midwest, some of those teams, and we're having 2 Cali teams come all the way over. Like, that's just ridiculous. This is at least geographically isn't that far off from where the other SEC schools are. It really isn't that far off at all. But it's still just this whole open-endedness and this wild west in college football there needs to be some checks and balances. Like, there needs to be somebody that steps in and says, look, we got to go about this a different way, or we got to manage this a little bit better.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. Again, I think it's being negotiated right now, but that would be an interesting one.
All right, let's get to some of these Patriots questions, and we can start with this one from Ashley. Then I'll pull up my Twitter and get the ones that people submitted early about Isaiah Wynn. This is kind of the three options with Isaiah Wynn, right? Starting tackle, starting right tackle, starting left tackle, or off the team. I don't know what else he would be at this point. So those are your three choices in the 3-card Monty. What do you see Isaiah Wynn? Where do you see Isaiah Wynn being here at the Patriots come September 11th?
Right tackle or not on the team. I think they signaled to us that Trent's going to be the left tackle.
Yeah.
I think they'll give Wynn a chance to win that job, but maybe a guard emerges and Michael Onwenu ends up at right tackle. Maybe just they can get tremendous value. Some other team elsewhere has an injury. He's in a contract year. You move on a year too early versus a year. Well, it wouldn't be a year too late. You move on a year too early. You don't, you lose them for nothing.
Right.
So I'm going to say right tackle or not on the team.
Yeah, I think that a good theory that I've heard floated about why they're moving him over to right tackle is actually related to Cole Strange. I remember last year, Michael Onwenu really struggled at left guard at times with Isaiah Wynn to his left. I think they're looking at trying to stabilize that left side, and having Trent Brown and David Andrews flanking the rookie gives him the best possible chance to succeed and hold up in his rookie season. So I think it's really about Cole Strange and trying to make sure that he has some comfortability, some proven veterans around him so that he doesn't have to deal with Isaiah Wynn to his left. This, to me, spells right tackle for Isaiah Wynn, though. I am still thinking that off the team is maybe a bridge too far for this offseason, just because, or this season in general. I guess we're kind of out of the offseason, just because they've moved so many parts on that offensive line already, right? You trade Shaq Mason, you lose Ted Karras in free agency, you draft a guard in the first round. There's already so many moving parts that I feel like moving another one and having really 3/5 of your line being totally new, and then a fourth guy being in a different position, that's a lot of shakeup for the Patriots with a green coaching staff, without a dedicated offensive line coach that's done it for a long time, with Matt Patricia and Billy Yates filling that responsibility. Doesn't it feel like it's a little bit too much of a change to just ship Isaiah Wynn out this offseason? I get the year too early, year too late, and you can maybe get something in compensation, but the way I see it is you're better off keeping him at right tackle, keeping him for the season, hope he plays well, quite frankly, and then goes out and gets a bag in free agency, and then you're looking at a third or a fourth round comp pick coming back to you anyways. I mean, are you going to do better than that in a trade now for Isaiah Wynn? If he plays well, he's probably going to outpace his compensation with a comp pick if he does get the bag in free agency next offseason.
Right. So, yeah, it's just a matter of balancing that. The other thing is, if you're going to play him in a position he's never played before, could hurt his value. And then maybe that, shifts the potential comp pick value. I mean, you're going through so many permutations of it, but yeah.
All right, here, let's pull up my Twitter feed here and get some of these submitted questions that we got early last night. And I want to start with this one. I hope everybody can see that. It's the biggest I can make it. I want to start with this one. I think it's interesting about the Mac Jones throwing videos that we've seen in terms of, there we go.
Next time, just screenshot them.
Okay, that's a lot of work. All right, I don't.
Not really.
Anyways, we've seen some of these videos surface. It's actually not been Mac Jones himself for the most part posting them. And this time around, it was Nelson Aguilar, right, on his Instagram feed working out with Mac Jones. I don't know how much you've studied them very closely, Alex, but what do you make of all the videos that have come out? And do you see any difference in his throwing motion or velocity or anything like that?
You see maybe a little more zip on the ball, but that can also be, it's naturally easier to throw without pads on.
Right.
So it's the kind of thing where it's nothing bad in them, but I'm hesitant to put any stock into them until we see Mac actually like playing football on an actual football field and pads and all that.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it too. If you don't have good mechanics and good zip on the ball and all those things when you're throwing against air on a practice field with no pass rush and a controlled environment like that, then you're probably not a very good quarterback, right? I mean, any quarterback that's worth a damn, that's working out in the settings that Mac Jones is working out in, can throw a good ball in that setting and have clean mechanics and all those types of things. If I want to look way too much into it, I did see maybe a little bit of a shortened release and kind of a little bit of a quicker trigger on his windup and his release. I think that's the goal, to try to harness some more of that energy to get the football out quicker and get the ball on receivers faster. that's got Tom House written all over it. He's really big into that release time, not just how long it takes you to wind up to throw, but the actual release of the arm moving forward and how quickly you can get your momentum moving forward is a very big Tom House specific thing that he's worked on for years with Tom Brady and other guys that he's worked with. So I saw maybe a little bit more of a sped up release or a shorter compact release, and maybe that's a goal to kind of get some more velocity on the football. But I also too would not necessarily overreact to anything that we saw. All right.
Yeah, again, it's just so far removed from what he's actually going to do that you can't have a big reaction to it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's go to this one with Trey Flowers. A lot of questions about Trey Flowers, or I saw in the chat, and Ndamukong Suh's name came up, like just guys that they could potentially assign still. I think they only have 87 players on their roster the last time I checked, so they have some roster spots. What do you think is? Do you think that Trey Flowers is still a possibility, or do you think it would have already happened by now?
No, I could see him, being one of those guys. He might not need camp, especially if he's planning on coming back here. He's somewhat familiar with the system, the coaching staff. He's been hurt a lot the last couple of years. He may not want to put his body through too much. He's somebody, again, I think it sort of makes sense for his situation to sign more towards the end of camp or even right before the regular season. He kind of knows what he is. I think outside of the medical stuff, teams know who he is as a player. He may want to see, a team has some injuries and he can cash in and maybe get a little more money if there's a desperate situation. So I'm not ruling him out yet. And Ndamukong Suh, I wouldn't rule out either, but he is probably going to command some serious money, some money the Patriots don't have right now. They'll need to move some contracts around, things like that. And I think they would see it as, I think they'd be more comfortable with a guy like Trey Flowers, who's been here, who they have a role for. Like if you bring in Ndamukong Suh, you kind of need to figure out how you're going to use him, right?
Yeah.
And are you going to play him with Barmore? Are you going to spell him with Barmore? What's that going to look like? All of that. Trey Flowers is going to plug and play. He's going to come in. He's going to play select snaps out of the role Kyle Van Noy played last year. It's easy as that. So I think Flowers makes more sense. I don't think it's a stretch that he would maybe wait a little bit to sign.
Yeah, he is wasn't 100% healthy at the end of last year, and I do think teams are going to want to see him first before they sign him. I do expect him to go on some visits, right, and go and work out for teams, potentially go through a medical check, things like that, before he signs anywhere. So until he's 100% healthy and confident in his body to go out there and start doing those workouts or those free agent visits, I don't think that he'll sign. I might have expected him to sign by now, just because at this point we're only a couple weeks away from training camp, and I kind of would have thought he would have been ready to go for some of those visits. But my guess is that he will go on at least one or two free agent visits and work out for teams before he officially signs a contract. The Patriots did that this offseason with a bunch of guys. Malcolm Butler came in for a workout before he signed. They even worked out Leonard Fournette before he signed. Remember, for that 12 minutes that we thought maybe Leonard Fournette was in their plan. So I still think that Trey Flowers is on an NFL roster this year. A matter of timing. We'll see. Maybe once we get into camp, they have him and they basically try him out in camp, right? They say, like, let's see what you look like for the first week and see if you like it, feel like you can hold up and stuff still. So I'm a little surprised he hasn't signed yet, but I think that that's coming for him anytime now. All right. We haven't talked a lot about Christian Wilkerson, Alex. I feel like we've talked so much about Trey Nixon. It's like that meme where it's like one day you're looking over here, the next day you're looking over there, right? Patriots fans end the last season, week 18 against Jacksonville. It's all Christian Wilkerson hype. Now it's Trey Nixon hype. Do you still have hopes for Christian Wilkerson to be an NFL roster player for the Patriots?
Yeah, I do. I think it's probably more special teams than receiver. He showed some flaws in that element of his game last year. I think he can make the team. And if he can work on his hands, like I think he can be a capable third or fourth NFL wide receiver. That's his biggest hang up right now to me. So if he makes the roster, I wouldn't be shocked, especially with some of the special teams losses he's had. And then we'll see where he develops as a receiver.
Yeah, that's fair. I think he's an explosive guy. I think he can get up the field, which I like about him as a receiver. I still think there's a lot of detail to his game that is missing. We saw early on in training camp last year, his hands were great, and then all of a sudden he like got the yips, right? And he couldn't catch anything the last like 2 weeks of training camp. And it seemed to linger with him for a while. He gets open, he can run. It's just finishing the plays that's been a big problem. But unfortunately, that's a big part of football at the wide receiver position. That obviously is actually
Right.
catching the ball. So if you can't actually catch the ball, then I don't care how fast you are. What's the guy from the replacements? I'm not going to remember his name. The guy
Oh,
that
I
was
know who
like
you're talking about. Yeah.
yeah, the wide receiver is like a 4.24 guy, but he couldn't catch, and they had to put the stickum on his hands. I mean, Wilkerson's not that fast, but it's that sort of thing with him. Well, we'll have to.
It's no, Orlando Jones is the actor. Clifford Franklin.
Clifford Franklin. There we go. Clifford Franklin reference. Yeah, that's one of those things where you might have all the other tools, but if you can't catch the football, then that's gonna get you out of the league real fast. But he could be a guy that could stick on special teams as a regular. I remember last training camp, he worked a lot with Matthew Slater, Justin Bethel, and that special teams core group, Corey Davis, and Cody Davis,
Yeah.
excuse me. And maybe that's a role for him moving forward. Slater's getting long in the tooth. Justin Bethel is getting up there in age as well. Maybe they train him to be the next Matthew Slater instead of training him to be the next Deion Branch, right? Maybe that's the way that things are going with him.
Right.
All right. There was a good question in here that a lot of people were interested in. Let me see if I can find it quickly there it is, about the complexity of the system. And I think this is a lot of words, right? This is a lot of words to kind of surmise here, but I think the general premise of what the person is asking is, did the Patriots system become so complex because of Tom Brady's football IQ and experience and all those types of things that it can only really be run by Brady, right? And Brady was sort of the only guy that could kind of get everybody pointed in the right direction and make it work. And now that Brady is gone, that Patriots are dialing it back, and Brady was sort of the engine of all that. I've heard this a lot. I'm not sure where you fall on it, Alex. I think there's some truth to it that obviously when you have a quarterback like Tom Brady who has played for 20 years and has the football IQ that he has, you can do a lot more in terms of things at the line of scrimmage or just in general with the offense than you would with the first or a second year quarterback. But ultimately, I do think McDaniels' system was just McDaniels' system. And I don't know if it was necessarily 100% a Tom Brady thing. I think it was maybe a little bit closer to like 60-40.
Well, and Tom Brady's going to elevate any system he's in. He's just that good. And I think they were able to run some more complex things, not just because Brady was as good as he was, but he was as experienced as he was. He'd seen so much. He'd had so much time to work on this, right? So
Yeah.
I don't think the system can look the same without Tom Brady. That being said, I don't think it was Brady fixing a broken system. I think at its core, there were elements of it that worked that were just
Yeah.
elevated by Brady being a part of it because Brady was just that good. Right. So I like their offensive system. I didn't like my biggest problem with McDaniels was his specific play calls in big moments. I didn't
Yeah.
like how he called certain plays, but the overall design, the overall concepts, I was a big fan of. But yes, it does. You do have to have really smart football players to make it work. But they've always brought in very smart football players. It's something that they've highlighted. You're not going to be able to replace both the talent and the experience of Tom Brady. And any system's going to take a hit by that, whether it's McDaniels, whether it's in Tampa, with whatever you put him in, it's not going to be the same without him.
Yeah, I just don't think that there's any merit to the Patriots being happy that Josh McDaniels took the Raiders job, right? I don't. I think that's going a step too far. I do
Yeah.
think there is some merit to the fact that McDaniels, Tiger doesn't change his stripes or whatever that saying is, right? And I think there is some merit to the fact that McDaniels does what he does and runs what he runs. And we saw this with Cam Newton, where, yeah, there was a Cam Newton package where they inked legs and they ran some read option plays that they certainly would not have run with Tom Brady or with Mac Jones, but they didn't really change the core concepts, especially in the passing game. It was more the running game that evolved with Cam. The passing game was still the passing game. And Cam spoke about it, how he didn't really grasp it and he really didn't have a good feel for it for most of the season. So McDaniels is who he is. He's going to run the same system that he ran here. in Vegas, like that's just the system. And I don't know if necessarily saying that Belichick was happy about it is really the best way to look at it. But I do think that there has to be some evolution that maybe the Patriot system didn't have over the last couple of years. Would McDaniels have been willing to evolve with the times or willing to evolve with the ways that they needed to evolve? I think he probably would have, but we didn't necessarily see that fully last year with Mac Jones. Maybe they needed a full offseason, knowing Mac was the entrenched starter and all those types of things,
Right.
to really do it. So I would have liked to have seen McDaniels continue. I mean, it's certainly better than their option right now. With Matt Patricia, Joe Judge running the offense versus Josh McDaniels, give me Josh McDaniels every single day of the week. But I think there is something to be said about the fact that McDaniels was pretty married to the way that he did things, and rightfully so, because it's been so successful for him for so long. But a fresh perspective, like I said earlier on the show, might not necessarily be a bad thing for this offense.
Yeah.
All right. What else do we got? Here we go. Okay, so I've heard this a lot about why are we not more concerned about the defense, and like people are kind of ignoring the defense and things like that. Are we doing that? Like
I'm not.
We started the show today saying that the cornerback group was easily the number one question mark heading into the season. I'm not quite as worried about linebacker just because of the way I think they're going to play it with the safeties being involved and things like that. But defensively, outside of a few guys, I'm not confident in a lot of people right now, or I don't know. I shouldn't say confident. I just don't know. I don't know what those guys are going to look like. We don't know what the rookies are going to look like. We don't know what Cam McGrone or Raekwon McMillan or Mac Wilson's going to look like in this defense. It is very legit. It's very, what's the word? It's very fair to be worried about the defense. I think we're all worried about the defense. That's my number one concern with the team.
Yeah, I'd agree. Just to address this question, I wouldn't say linebacker is the worst group in a long time. There's just a lot of unknowns, right? Cornerback, I think there's more reasons for concern with corner because Malcolm Butler's 32. There were only 6 corners in the league last year that were over the age of 30 that played more than 10 games. I mean, there's concrete reason to be concerned about that one. He also just spent a year out of the league. Jack Jones is a rookie. You don't know. Juwan Williams hasn't done anything in 3 years. I mean, it feels like there's definitive reasons to be skeptical about those guys. Linebacker's a little different to me. I think it could go either way, right?
Yeah.
You do have guys with legitimate upside. McGrone, McMillan, Wilson, like these guys, you really only need one of those guys to pan out. And are they going to be the Peruski, Vrabel, McGinnis, Roman Pfeiffer, Ted Johnson linebacker group? No. But I think if a couple of those guys pan out and can give you replacement level play, you'll be fine at linebacker. Juwan Bentley's good on early downs if he stays in that role. Again, these guys look like they can maybe cover a little bit, play sideline to sideline.
Yeah.
They should be fine. If all 3 of those guys are spectacular busts, then yeah, it's going to be a rough group. I think chances are at least one of those guys hits. I think more than one of them hits because there's a lot to like there. The cornerback group is really what scares me because you don't have that. Outside of Jack Jones, there's not a ton of potential. Like you're hoping, you know what the historical evidence suggests is going to be an uphill climb for Malcolm Butler. Could he pan out? Yes, but the historical evidence points to struggles there. Juwan Williams, again, hasn't shown anything. What's going to be different in year 4 that wasn't different the first 3 years? You don't have those definitive answers on the linebackers. That's a difference to me. But yeah, I think we are concerned about the defense. The offense is more of a, we talk a lot about the offense, and that's the nature of the game because fantasy football has brainwashed people, and that sucks. The questions on offense to me are more just ordering, depth chart, right? We feel good about the receivers they have. Again, they're not world beaters. It's not Moss, Welker, Stallworth, Gaffney, but they've got decent wide receiver talent, at least 1 through 5, maybe 1 through 6 on the depth chart, right? What order is that going to be in? How much will guys play over other guys? That's a question, but we feel like they can compete. It's still worth discussing, but it's different. Whereas on defense, you're looking at, well, do they have enough guys to fill out the depth chart? at the cornerback position.
Yeah.
That's the big difference. You can discuss both and it sounds similar, but they're two different conversations.
I actually feel really good where they are roster-wise offensively. We'll see about the coaching, and we'll see how much Mac Jones can elevate his game to that next level to really
I
carry
still would
the
like
group.
to see them add a veteran pass catching running back. That's my biggest question on that side of the
That's
ball.
fair. I guess my feeling is between James White, Ty Montgomery, and hopefully Pierre Strong can maybe contribute a little bit as a rookie. They might have enough there, but if James White's not ready to be James White again,
That's kind of what I'm worried about.
yeah, if he's not James White again, then certainly that's something that they should be looking into. But offensively, I think they're really in good shape. I know they don't have the number one alpha dog, but a lot of metrics out there. I know this numbers drive you nuts, Alex, but the numbers are actually on the Patriots side on this one, that building a passing game with depth 1 through 5, with good talented players 1 through 5 is actually better than just building a passing game with a really good number one receiver and then a bunch of jags, right? Like that's the better
Right.
approach just from a balance standpoint. It's much harder to defend if the Patriots go and play a team that has one really good wide receiver. Well, you double that guy, or you know, if you have a Stephon Gilmore type, you put your number one corner on that guy, you take him out of the game, and then the quarterback is left looking around, who do I throw to? You know, they're doubling, you know, so and so. Who else is open? Nobody. The Patriots will have the luxury of having a lot of different depth pieces and a lot of different matchup weapons, and I think that they have really good depth at wide receiver, at tight end, even at running back, even though third down running back might be a spot that could be a concern. In general, Damian Harris, Ramondre Stevenson, the rookie running backs, I think they have good depth there in terms of running the football. So offensively, I think they really look great on paper if the coaching holds up. Defensively, there's a ton of concern about their roster talent, overall talent, who fills out which spots, like you were saying. Really, the only group that I feel great about is the front. I don't even know if I feel great. I just feel better than the rest of the pieces just because of Matthew Judon and Christian Barmore. I think those two guys
Feel great about 2/3 of the front, basically.
Yeah, I think those two guys are going to bring it. Everybody else, it's a wait and see. The linebacker group, or especially the off-ball linebacker group, I really think that you're going to see so much of Kyle Duggar, Adrian Phillips, and Jabril Peppers at the second level of the defense that a lot of these depth linebackers that we've talked about, I don't really know how much they're actually going to play. So I think there's going to be one full-time linebacker. It's probably going to be Jawan Bentley for the time being. Maybe somebody like Cam McGrone can take that job from Bentley down the road. But from right now, I would say it's probably going to be Bentley that's going to be a regular, a full-time contributor. And then it's really the safeties that I think are going to just play a ton close to the line of scrimmage. So I almost don't even look at some of those depth linebackers. And I say the second linebacker is probably really going to be Adrian Phillips, right? Or it's going to be Kyle Duggar, or it's going to be Jabril Peppers. So that makes me feel a little bit better about the linebacker group, I think, just because of that. But corner is very worrisome. I still think that I have worries about who's going to contribute on the front besides Judon and Barmore. Like we saw last year, nobody else really emerged from that group, especially in the pass rush to get after the quarterback. And it was either Barmore or Judon getting to the quarterback, or nobody. And they definitely need to hope that a guy like Josh Uche can emerge out of that group and take a next step forward, or Dietrich Wise has a bigger season rushing the passer or something like that. So yeah, there's a lot of reason to be concerned. I mean, the defense, what did they give up? 47 points to Buffalo in the wild card game. I know they had some injuries and some COVID guys and things like that, but more or less that's your defense, right? I think, and some of those guys aren't even coming back, like a Hightower or JC.
Right.
So it's definitely worrisome. It's definitely the biggest concern going on the team right now. All right, let's go back to some of these questions in the chat to wrap this up here. Look at this question from David about the rest of the AFC. We haven't talked a ton about the rest of the AFC. Maybe we'll do a show before the season about kind of a whip around the rest of the AFC and the AFC East, because it is incredibly deep this year in the AFC. It's going to be really tough to make the playoffs, I think, for any team, really, not just the Patriots. Who do you see, though, in the AFC as your team that takes a step forward, or or the team that takes a step back? Like your Titans are on this list for David as the team that takes a step back.
Yeah, I mean it's probably Titans taking a step back just because they lost AJ Brown, and he was such a big part of what they did. And I don't think Treylon Burks is going to be able to give them that kind of production.
Yeah.
So I think their window, unfortunately, may have closed. They did get the number 1 seed though last year in the AFC. Let's not forget
That
that.
was wild. Yes.
So I could see them taking a step back. I'm going to say Buffalo too. Again, I don't think what they've done is sustainable. Teams aren't going to play prevent for 45 minutes against you. Eventually, I hope teams stop doing that against the Bills and force Josh Allen to make throws. I don't know why the rest of the league is just content on letting Josh Allen be good, but that appears to be the agenda. Team that's going to take a step forward. Do the Ravens count? Like Lamar was hurt so much last year, and that's why they finished 8-9.
Yeah.
They should be, like, assuming Lamar stays healthy, they should be better than that. But I don't know if that counts as a step forward versus just being healthy. You get like the Broncos too would be another team. It's a fundamentally different team. You go from Drew Lock to Russell Wilson. They should take a step forward as well. And I'll say the Raiders. They had Devontae Adams. They had a good coach in Josh McDaniels. The Raiders are a team too that should be better. I don't know. I feel like those are all obvious ones.
Yeah, I think the team that I have to take a step forward is the Raiders. I honestly really like what they've done. And for some reason, and this is just like a gut feeling, I kind of feel like Josh McDaniels as a head coach the second time around might get it right. Right. I feel like you learn a lot from the first experience. I mean, look at Bill Belichick in Cleveland, right? He comes to New England and we know who he is now. So I feel like the second stint, if you can go the example of Belichick, Pete Carroll with the Seattle Seahawks after struggling with the Patriots and going to college, and he comes back with the Seahawks and wins a Super Bowl there. There's just a lot of precedent of guys actually panning out the second time around and learning from their mistakes the first time. And I love what they've built over there. They've traded for Devontae Adams, which is obviously a home run for them, but also some of the other moves that they have made to make that McDaniel Ziegler team, like even little things like Jakob Johnson, right? And getting a fullback in there to run some of McDaniels' two-back personnel type of things that he likes to do. There's a lot to like about what the Raiders have done this offseason, and they've taken care of some of their guys too, like Max Crosby signed an extension, and Carr is now under contract, and Hunter Renfrow. So they're not only just adding from what outside the organization, but they're clearly identifying the guys that are culture builders in that building and making sure that they're holding on to those players too. So a really good offseason from Dave Ziegler. I think they're going to take a step forward this year. They were a playoff team last year, but lost to the Bengals in the wild card weekend round. And that game was not really that competitive. Like I never really thought the Bengals were on the ropes at any point in that game against the Raiders.
Let's not forget, they did that with a ton of instability too. 10 wins in a playoff spot with a ton of instability with the coach, the GM, all that. You know what? Because it's June. Let's do this because it's June. We have the time. Buffalo Bills last year 11-6. They better, worse, or the same this year?
11-6. I think they're about the same.
Same. I would agree. Patriots 10-7. Better, worse, same?
I think they're worse, but maybe like it's 9-8 instead of 10. I don't think it's going to be like a drop off a cliff season. But
we'll call within a game one way or the other same. So I would agree.
Yeah, same. I just think their schedule's tough. I think they have a difficult
schedule. They do.
This year. Yeah.
Miami Dolphins 9-8. I'm going to say better.
I say same. I'm not. Okay. I'm not fully buying the Miami hype because I'm not 100% sold on Mike McDaniel as a head coach. I think he's a great coordinator, but I'm not 100% sold on him leading a team yet. I don't know. Some of the things that I've heard from Miami about how like it's important to him to be friends with the players.
Yeah.
Like, what's that about? Right? You're the head. It's like no matter what profession.
We get it. You're cool.
Right. No matter what profession you're in, whether it's professional football or just regular everyday life profession, your boss is not supposed to be your buddy. Like that's your boss, right? Like you have to have some sort of control. It's okay to be friendly, but from what I heard, like they get together as a team, like outside the facility, and he gets like upset that they don't invite him, like things like that. I don't know. It just I'm almost in the school of thought with Mike McDaniel that he's still almost like a little starstruck with some of these guys, right? And he like just wants to be friends with Tyreek Hill because he's Tyreek Hill, right? And that's not a recipe for success. We'll see. Maybe I'm overlooking them or overhyping that angle to it, but Mike McDaniel, I think is trying too hard to be cool. Like it's kind of like Pete Carroll was still Pete in the whole thing, right?
Right. I don't disagree. I just think they've built that team so perfectly for Tua. Obviously, Tua has his shortcomings, but they have two of, if not the best 2 yards after catch receivers in the league. They don't need him throwing the ball far. And when he throws short, he's still very accurate. Jets 4-13.
I still say same. Like
Same.
I like some of the things that they did, but you and I both were okay on Garrett Wilson. Like he's a good prospect, right? I'm not trying to bash Garrett Wilson, but do I expect Garrett Wilson to have a Justin Jefferson like impact as a rookie? I no. I don't necessarily see that, especially with the quarterback throwing to him. I don't know. I'm not so sold on what the Jets have been doing. I think they've made some low key nice moves in veteran free agency, not overpaying anybody and just getting some solid football players in there. But I still think they got a ways to go.
I agree with you. I'll believe the Jets had a good draft when the players turn out good. There's been too many times where we talked in April and May about the Jets having good draft and then the guys end up sucking. So,
well, a lot of people really like their draft, right? I mean, that was
but people have liked their draft before and then they don't develop the players. So,
I'm with you. I'm just saying
I'll believe it when I see it.
That was a sneaky. Oh, the Jets had a great draft. It was like one of those when people did their draft grades, like they were one of the teams that everybody loved, right? Because they drafted. They got Sauce Gardner at 4, Garrett Wilson at 10, and then Jermaine Johnson at 26. Jermaine Johnson's a guy that the media thought was going to go top 10, top 15. He was one of the fallers in the first round, falls to 26. He obviously fell for a reason, right? The NFL obviously knew something about Jermaine Johnson that the media did not, or saw something about Jermaine Johnson that the media did not. So just because all of our mock drafts and big boards had Jermaine Johnson as a top 20 player and they got him at 26 doesn't automatically make Jermaine Johnson some great player. Like maybe the league was right about him. Maybe he's got off-field or work ethic things. I don't know. Like
look at, and somebody asked us about Baker. Look at the 2018 draft. 2 of the top 3 players are no longer on their teams. And the third one, Saquon Barkley, probably won't be much longer either. Bengals 10-7.
Better.
I agree. I agree. I think now they've tasted success, right? Now they're going to chase it.
Yeah.
Steelers 9-7-1. I'm going worse.
Worse. Definitely worse. Yeah.
Browns 8-9.
Who's the quarterback?
Yeah, I love Jacoby Brissett, but I'm going to say worse. That's a tough division too. I'm going to say worse.
I would assume the Browns got to be off the board in Vegas, right? You can't. How do you without knowing?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I was on with Joe Murray yesterday. He was trying to get the odds on the Patriots Browns week 6. Baltimore Ravens 8-9 better, assuming Lamar stays healthy. Better.
Yeah, I think Lamar. What was that season? Who won MVP? 2020, right? Was the MVP year?
19 was the year before COVID. Yeah.
Yeah, 19. I think he has a 2019 like season this year. I think Lamar is gonna have a big year.
You buying that picture of going around of him looking all jacked up?
I loved Rashad Bateman coming out. He was injured all last year as a rookie. I think that he's going to be somebody that will emerge for them. I don't know. I just think Lamar is a damn stud. I think he eventually figures it out to get back to that level.
I know you're a big Lamar guy. Titans 12-5 worse.
Yeah, worse.
Colts 9-8. I'll say a little better. I could see them getting into double digits. I don't know about much more than that, but they have a real quarterback now in Matt Ryan. So
yeah, I definitely like the move to get Matt Ryan. I think that he was wasting away a little bit in Atlanta. He's a very, very good quarterback still. I remember watching the Falcons tape in the lead up to that game. And even I know the Falcons offense kind of got pummeled in that game by the Patriots defense, but they were missing a lot of pieces. That whole Calvin Ridley situation was going on at the time. And he still made some really, really good throws in that game where he had no business even finding open receivers, right? So I think he's still got some good play in him. And I would say that they are a little bit better just because the quarterback's a little bit better.
Houston 4-13. Dare I say worse?
Can you be worse than 4-13?
Well, we said one game on either side is the same. So I guess I'm saying they're going to win 2 games. I'll say same.
Yeah, it's really, really hard to win only 1 or 2 games in the NFL. You
This
have
is
to
a
be really
really good quarterback class. I think we're going to see some teams really shut it down. Try to
I
go for
could
that
see Nick
1-2 win
Caserio
season.
doing that. I,
Yeah,
I could see him taking that angle, especially later on in the season if it's pretty clear that they're going to be a bottom feeder team, which it probably should be anyways going into the
right.
season. But once they get into the year, if they're 1-10 or something like that, then sure, tank it. Yeah.
Jags 3-14. They'll be better. I don't know if they get above 500, but they should be like a 6, 7, 8 win team.
Yeah. Are we sure Doug Peterson's a good coach?
Better than Urban Meyer.
He's better than Urban Meyer because Urban Meyer is a nut job, right? But
Right.
are we sure that Doug Peterson's a good coach, or was that Eagles staff? That Eagles staff was loaded, like that,
Right.
especially on offense. Like Frank Reich, I might have been the architect of that whole thing in Philadelphia.
I think Peterson's better. I think Trevor Lawrence with another year of experience is big. Travis
Yeah,
Etienne will be healthy.
they also
Again,
made some
they're not
moves.
making the playoffs or anything, but they should win at least 5 games.
Yeah, they also made some moves. Like they overpaid Christian Kirk, obviously, but he's
Right.
still a good NFL wide receiver. That's better than who
Right.
they were running out there last year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Chiefs 12-5. I'm between worse and same. I'm gonna say worse, but like I think like 10 wins.
They're not going to lose. They're not going to. They're going to get to double-digit wins with Patrick Mahomes. When you have Patrick
Right.
Mahomes, and I'll also throw Andy Reid in there, who's probably a top 5, top 3 NFL coach at this point. They're going to get to 10+ wins automatically just because they have those two guys. But I do think they're going to take a step back offensively without Tyreek Hill. I don't think it's going to be as seamless as some other people think just because they have Mahomes and Kelsey still. I love Sky Moore. I mean, we were the biggest Sky Moore proponents here, especially me, speaking for myself. But I think that that's a difference, a huge difference when you don't have Tyreek. And let's see what Travis Kelsey does now that he is the center of attention on that
Yeah.
offense. It's one thing to be the Welker, right, with Randy Moss over the top. Now you're Randy Moss. Like, let's see what you can do.
Raiders were 10-7 last year. I think we both said we expect them to be better than that.
Yes.
It's the thing where like the Chiefs are still on paper probably the best team in that division. Will they finish with the best record? I could see another team, like a team like the Raiders, maybe getting by them because the Chiefs just know they got to get in, right?
Yeah.
They know if they get in, they're in good shape.
Right.
Chargers 9-8. I'm going to say worse. I don't know how that team goes into the locker room and looks that coach in the face after he cost them a spot in the playoffs last year for his precious spreadsheets. I know they got Khalil Mack.
Nobody
Great.
takes aim at Brandon Staley quite like Alex.
How do you as a player go and play for that coach who knocked you out of the playoffs last year? Your own coach knocked you out of the playoffs last year. That is going to be a really interesting dynamic.
They got better. J.C. Jackson makes them better on defense. They really didn't have an outside corner of his talent level or his tier on that team. Justin Herbert is a dude. I mean, that guy is incredible. I think he's just as good as like Allen and Mahomes, honestly. So I say same to better just because I really believe a lot in Justin Herbert. I think he's going to be an MVP candidate for a very, very long time in this league. The one thing that they did, though, that really surprised me, and look, their offensive line has been in shambles for years. They had to work on the offensive line. But out of all of the things to do for the mathiest of math teams and the mathiest of math coaches to draft a guard in the first round shocked me because that is not the math, right? Like math people do not draft guards, a non-premium position in the first round. Zion Johnson's a really good football player. You know my feelings on guards in the first round, but I was, out of all the teams in the league, I thought the Chargers were the last team that would take a guard in the first round just because of the way that they think normally.
And this is the first one we disagree on. I'm still going to say bad coach, bad situation in the room, tougher division. I'm going to say they take a step back, even with all the talent they added.
I am so shocked that you think the Chargers are going to take a step back.
Denver Broncos, and I want to like the Chargers. I do. I used to be a fan of theirs. Like I'm not a fan. I was a Patriots fan, but those LaDainian Tomlinson, Shane Merriman teams, it helped the Patriots always beat them. But those were cool teams. Those teams were fun to watch. I want to like the Chargers, but I think they take a step back. Denver Broncos 7-10, better. I mean, added Russell Wilson, they're going to be better.
I think they're going to be better, but I'm not sure. I think Russell Wilson makes them 2 wins better. So
they should at least flip that record. They were 7-10 last year. They should at least flip that.
Yeah, I think they get to 9 wins. I'm not giving them 10.
You're not giving them the 10th. Interesting.
Look,
Interesting. Okay.
I said I wasn't going to overrate offseason things, but Russell Wilson looks awfully comfortable in that boat with Sierra right now. He doesn't look like he's hitting the gym too much. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's got a little bit of a dad bod, honestly. And I don't know if that's just Russell Wilson's physique and if he's kind of always been that way.
He has always kind of been like that.
Yeah, maybe he's never been a rocked up type of guy. You know, maybe that's on me. But I think there are some limitations with Russell Wilson at quarterback. He's a spectacular downfield thrower. He's obviously a great athlete, but they had some issues with him in Seattle in terms of seeing the middle of the field and being able to throw the ball with anticipation, make layered throws in the middle of the field. Some people make fun of him and say it's about his height, right? And he can't see over the line and to throw those 5 to 7 yard passes right over the line of scrimmage. But I don't know. I don't know how much better at this stage of his career Russell Wilson makes Denver. But I like their defense. Their defense is legit, I think, this year. Patrick Surtain's going to be one of the top 5-6 corners in the NFL before the year's out.
I know you probably want to get the Boston Sportsman in, but this was fun. Let's do the NFC next week or in 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, I'm glad we did this. I meant to set this up for us at some point anyway, so I'm glad we did this because we haven't really looked at the rest of the NFL. So we'll do the NFC next week. We can go through those teams as well because the NFC counts too, even though it's not as relevant for the Patriots. And I also want to do before camp, maybe we can fit it in a deeper dive into just the AFC East teams and what maybe the Patriots are going to be up against in the division. So we'll get to that. But yeah, let's wrap it with the Boston Sports Minute and get out of here on this lovely Thursday afternoon. The Red Sox last night, Alex, that was a classic case. And I understand because we're media types now too. So I understand that this is the gig and this is what happens. But when every reporter under the sun, when Sam Kennedy goes on Nesson before the game and talks about how excited everybody is for the Rook to make his first major league start, he gets knocked around a little bit. That was a classic case of overhyping the situation. And I don't blame Brian Bayo. Was it Bayo, right? But it's a Y instead of an L sound. I don't blame him at all for that. Not at all. I think it was all the hype train overhyping him. And I look at like where he ranks in general in the grand scheme of things. That he's like the 40th ranked prospect in Major League Baseball right now. The way people were talking about him was like he was Steven Strasburg when he was a rookie, right? Or one of these like bona fide number one of all baseball type prospects. So I don't think this is on Bayo. I think this is 100% on the coverage of Bayo going into this game.
Well, I also think it's on the team. One, not a good defensive effort behind him last night. Get rid of the shift first and foremost, but there's also you had Franchi drop a ball at first base that should have gotten him out of an inning. He might not be ready, but they had to rush him up. Most teams, and I did this number 2 years ago. I don't know if the number shifted, but I did it in 2019. So from 2009 and 2019, on a minimum, teams needed on average 9 or 10 starters to get through the major league season. That's just the number it took. You had 9 or 10 pitchers start at least one game. That includes openers, guys from the bullpen, etc.
Yeah.
The Red Sox came into this season, not including James Paxton, because he's not supposed to pitch this year, but this is including Chris Sale. The Red Sox came into the season with 5 starting pitchers with major league experience on their 40-man roster. That's not enough. And look, do you need to have 10 guys with major league experience? No, guys are going to make their debuts. Josh Winkowski was ready, and we knew he was ready coming into the season. He was always supposed to make his debut this year. But, okay, so you have 5 major league guys, so Winkowski's ready. Maybe you're going to do a bullpen day, right? Whitlock ended up starting, so that's 6. You're still short. And people were saying it last night. Brian Bayo wasn't called up because the team thought he was major league ready. Brian Bayo was called up because he was the team's best option at that point. That shouldn't necessarily be the case. So I don't like them. One start isn't the be all end all, but I don't love them screwing with the kid's development. There's a lot last night to be excited about. I thought his sinker looked really good. I thought his changeup when he spotted it look, the sinker rate, he's hanging around 97. The changeup, when he spotted it, looked good. He was clearly jacked up, a lot of adrenaline. He had trouble controlling it, but when he got it in the zone, hitters had trouble with it. He needs a fourth pitch eventually. There's a lot to be excited about, but he's not ready quite yet. I think you look at next year as a realistic long-term call-up. Bloom even said after the game, they're not going to have him up and stick him in the bullpen, but he should not have been up last night. That's on Chaim Bloom. And by the way, the guy who's supposed to save them if Bayo can't, Chris Sale, 5 walks and 3 2/3. He's not ready to come back either. I think they're counting on him to do a lot more than you can realistically ask him to do. His fit in the tunnel was hilarious, but that's just another sign. You know why he did that? I know, I love it. I love the energy.
I know why he did it, which worries me.
Right. He did it because he knows he's not ready.
Yeah.
He's thrown 41 innings since 2018. He wants to get back in the bigs. That's not the reaction of a guy who thinks his next start is coming at the major league level. So they again have a real pitching problem. The other thing about it, you had to bring that kid up. Biggest game of the year to that point. They can't win in the division. They have a major pitching problem. They had a real chance last night to get everybody to buy back in between Sale and Bayo and winning a series against the Rays, and it all went out the window.
Yeah, that's 100% spot on. I don't think I could have tackled that better myself. To me, just going off of what you said with Bayo, there had to have been somebody, and I know Seabold, I know Winchowski, I know Bayo. There's got to be another starter down in the minors that they don't necessarily see in the same class as Bayo in terms of his long-term outlook. That like, okay, if you mess with this guy on a spot start, then like kind of so be it, right? Like it's not the end of the world if he comes up and gets knocked around a little bit. But like you said, to mess with the kid's development, all to just get him in for one start in the majors. I get maybe they felt like they wanted to see, like if he comes in and dominates, then maybe he's ready, right? But if the coaches down there, which is their job, is to know whether a guy is ready or not, all kind of felt like he still could use some more time down in Worcester. Why not just pull up somebody else just to make the start last night and go from there instead of messing with the kid's development? That to me seems like a in the moment sort of knee jerk sort of thing, which is not what the Red Sox should be all about, especially when it's a 162 game season. Like, let's chill about them needing to win a do or die game on July 6th, right? It seems,
but it is a do or die game on July 6th because they put themselves in this hole. They are now 7 and 18 against the American League East.
Bad. I know.
That's it. Yeah. They're all must win games from here on out. They need to start. They can't just win these series. They need to start sweeping teams if they want to have a shot at this thing.
Yeah. I love this fire from Chris Sale, but I'm with you. I know I've been really jacked up to see Chris Sale back with the Red Sox, and I still am. But when you have a tirade like that after a rehab assignment in Worcester, that tells you that he knows he's not right. Like whether it's physical, mental, he's rusty, whatever the case may be. When you go on a tirade like that, then he clearly knows that something is not quite right yet with his whole program, and he needs maybe another start in Worcester, maybe 2 more starts. Like, who knows? But he knows he's not ready to go. He knows he's not ready to hit major league batter or face major league batters yet, and that's worrisome. Like that stinks because he's what 32, 30, 31, 32, 33, something like that. So with all these injuries, with all the walks down in Worcester, you do have concerns that maybe he's just never going to be the same guy again. And I hope I'm wrong. I want to be wrong, but that's sort of the look of it, that maybe he'll never fully get it back. And this is exactly why I was all on board with them trying to transition him into a bullpen role, because now you're just pitching one good inning, right? Like if he's the closer, they just need one good inning out of you. Like they need 15 pitches and that's it. And instead they're trying to stretch him back out, and it's pretty clear that he doesn't have the command that he needs right now to be a starter that eats up multiple innings. So I'm still in the camp that would like to see them try to make him a back end of the bullpen type of guy at this point, because that's a lot. I don't know. I'm not a baseball guy, but it feels a lot easier to me in a way to be able to just go out there and throw one good inning every other day than it is to have to go and make a start in the major leagues. Am I totally off base with that?
No, you're not. I've been saying since the beginning he should be in the bullpen.
Yeah.
He absolutely should be in the bullpen.
All right, a question here in the chat about the Celtics, and we can do this and then wrap it up. Not much Bruins takes tonight because the draft, they don't have a first round pick currently, right?
No, and they have a second that they were supposedly they're trying to trade back up into the first.
Yeah,
They need to take a Rams approach. They can't draft. Trade the picks for players.
yeah, that's fair. Anybody on the Celtics Summer League roster that excites you, Alex?
Yeah, 3 guys. JD Davison, obviously.
Yeah,
He's the perfect summer league player. I don't know if he turns into an NBA player, but he's such a good athlete. He's going to be due for at least one poster throughout this. AJ Reeves, I don't know that he makes the team. They have so many guards, but he went to Providence. He's from Roxbury. So that's just a really cool story getting to see him with the Celtics. The real guy, though, I think that those are the guys I'm looking forward to watch is in, I think they're going to play the most fun basketball.
Yeah.
The guy I'm watching in terms of can he actually make the Celtics? Travion Williams is a center from Purdue. Liked him coming into the draft. He was kind of supposed to go right in that range. He ended up going undrafted. They're bringing him in for summer league. 6'10". He's listed at 255. I'm going to take the over, and it's all muscle, right? They need he can play in the post, but he's a good passer. He's athletic. Who does that sound like? He's like I don't want to say he's like Robert Williams now, but he's like what Robert Williams was when he first came out.
Yeah.
They need another big to limit Robert Williams' minutes during the regular season. Maybe they sign a guy, right? They were linked to Thomas Bryant. I know some people brought up Serge Ibaka before he signed. Travion Williams could realistically be that guy. So I'm really interested to see what he's going to do.
All right, there you go. So there's the Boston Sports.
You don't have anybody?
You
don't know you don't know who's on the roster. Just say it. It's fine.
No, I do know who's on the roster for the most part, but you covered most of the guys. I'm excited to see Davison. I think that those guys that are just raw athletes like that, the Celtics have had some luck with those types of players, with developing those types of players. I know he's not Jaylen Brown, right? Jaylen Brown was drafted in the lottery and much higher than a guy like JD Davison, but even Jaylen coming out was sort of just a raw tools player, right? And they did a nice job with developing him and bringing him along. So it's tough to make this team right now as a guard, though. That's the thing. I don't think that you're making the Celtics roster as a guard, and I would assume that JD Davison spends the season with the Red Claws. Is it still the Red Claws, or I forgot if they changed their name or not, but I assume that
Celtics now. Yeah.
Yeah, I assume that he's still in Maine this season, but I'm excited to see him play and see what his athleticism can bring to the table. And I think they don't play the Thunder at all, but Chet Holmgren is like the star of the summer league so far. I'm not a believer yet.
You're not a big Chet Holmgren guy. That's fine. You're just jealous.
He's got to hit the weight room. Let's see. I can't wait until he has to guard a real NBA player in the post and see what happens to him. Get it pushed into the first row by some guy in the summer league last night, and everybody's hyping this kid. I just don't see it. All right. Anyways, so next week I am actually taking a much needed vacation for once in my life. So we're not going to have the podcast next week because I'm going to be in lovely Martha's Vineyard on a beach somewhere. Getting some very necessary R&R before we get going in training camp. So we'll take the week off next week, and then we'll be back the following week with our typical Tuesday, Thursday, and we'll go right into training camp with it. But we'll have some stuff on the channel to keep you until then when I'm away, and we'll still stay in the loop. And hopefully, fingers crossed, the Patriots don't make any major moves while I'm gone. If they do, then I will have my laptop with me on the island, and you know the drill. We'll figure out something. But hopefully, we'll be able to take the week off next week and get some very necessary break in before training camp picks up, and then we'll have all our training camp preview coverage starting the following week, which will be the week before training camp, and then we're going to get right into it. So we're looking forward to it, and we'll keep you guys updated if we do have a show next week, if there is any roster moves that are worth talking about. But plan on seeing us again on Tuesday the following week. So until then, signing off for Alex Barth, I'm Evan Lazar. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.